Hi everyone, I've put together this mini lecture to review the program theory matrix and evaluation framework to address a lot of the confusion that's apparent between these two items and what they both should look like and contain. In general, I wanted to give a little bit of feedback on the two assignments that were due this past week. For the program theory matrix, many of you did not follow the format that was recommended, did not consistently provide all the required elements for each outcome, and didn't include all of the outcomes from your outcomes chain. On the evaluation framework side, there were usually at least one element missing. Often that was the time element. So what I'll do in this brief lecture is to review the components of a program theory matrix, review the format for it, look at what are the components of the evaluation framework, and then just summarize the differences between them. So your program theory matrix has success criteria, assumptions, activities, outputs, and resources for each outcome in your outcomes chain. That's really the key thing, that we have to cover all of the outcomes in your outcomes chain in this matrix. The first is success criteria. How will you know when your outcome has been successfully achieved? This could be the quality or quantity of some feature of the outcome. It could be the numbers and types of people that are impacted. It could be the geographic location. It could involve a timeline of when the outcome is successfully achieved. And it could also be constraints with how the outcome is achieved, such as that it's done within the allocated budget. The success criteria, and which most outcomes will not have all of these things. It's going to vary a lot depending on what the outcome specifically is for your program. So we categorize assumptions into the program factors and the non-program factors. So for the program factors, the question is really what elements of your program specifically contribute to this outcome. So not what the overall program is doing, but how is it related to this outcome in your outcomes chain. And again, that's going to, what you include here is going to vary depending on what the program is and what specific outcome you're speaking to. But it could involve adequacy of resources. It could involve quality, quantity, or timeliness of the program delivery. Other aspects of program management might be relevant. And then the non-program factors are things that are completely outside of your program and could involve the environmental, economic or political environment, cultural factors, social factors. It could be something as simple as the weather. If you're counting on people commuting back and forth to a site for your program, weather might play a role in how successful that is. And you may also be counting on using publicly available resources, so there's an assumption that those will be available at the time needed and through the duration of the program. So the next three things are really about what is your program doing. So first, the activities. Again, and it's focused on the specific outcome in your outcomes chain that the program is dealing with. So the activities of the program are going to address. So that may be training on specific skills or procedures. It may be providing assistance. It may be ongoing support or counseling. Again, this is going to look different depending on what your outcome is, but those are just some ideas to think about. What are the activities within the program that contribute to a particular outcome? The outputs are sort of like the products of your program. So this could include the number of people who complete it. It could include processes that have been completed. It could be products like a tool or a resource like a document template that is created as a result of the program. So again, going to vary quite a lot depending on what you're doing and what the outcome is, but those are some things. They're usually tangible, something you can count, say yes or no, it happened, and maybe they produce something new. And then the resources, the most obvious being the financial costs, but it might also involve human resources, facilities, or other things that are necessary to achieve that particular outcome in your program. So how do you put all this together? I have referred you all to Table 8.5 in your textbook. And this is basically what that is. So you want to have your outcome and your success criteria on the left-hand side. And then the other columns, you have your assumptions. If you want to subdivide that into program and non-program, you can do that, or you can have them in the same column. The activities, the outputs, and the resources. The sample in Table 8.5 only has one row completed, but the idea is you need to complete every row for every outcome in your chain. And at the end, it should be a completely filled in table. The order of these columns here is not a requirement, but I would highly recommend keeping your outcome and success criteria to the far left, and then having everything else to the right of that. And you can rearrange it in whatever way makes the most sense, but those are the column headings that you need to have. So shifting gears into program evaluation, there are some different things that you want to be thinking about when you're talking about evaluation of a program. First of all is, what stage is the program in? What kind of evaluation are you doing? Is it a feasibility study? Is it to see whether the program's effective? Are you going to assess whether your assumptions are being met, both program and non-program factors? Are you trying to explain your program theory or understand if there's an alternative theory working? Sometimes we think things are going to work a certain way and we have unintended consequences that may be positive or negative, and we're trying to figure out how those happened. You're thinking about what aspects of the program actually need to be measured and evaluated. Not necessarily everything does. And if there's problems that have come up with program implementation, or some things that are uncertain and you're not that you need to dig into further. You might also be considering how multiple stakeholders are evaluating the outcomes and how that's going to inform your evaluation framework. So when actually operationalizing an evaluation framework, there are 4 questions that need to be addressed. You need to identify the timing and the purpose of your evaluation. You need to identify what your key questions are. You need to figure out which information is needed to answer those questions, and then come up with a design and an approach to actually collect that data and complete the evaluation. So there's not a specific one way to format. It's like the program theory matrix kind of has, there's not a whole lot of wiggle room, right? It's a table. Your program evaluation framework can look a little bit different than that, but it should be driven by the success criteria that you've already defined in your program theory matrix. You may not need or want to evaluate all of the outcomes. So that is one key difference, is that your matrix, you needed to hit all your outcomes in your outcomes chain. In your evaluation framework, that might not be necessary. For example, if your program is aimed at changing some sort of immediate behavior, you may only be able to measure whether or not that immediate behavior has changed versus some longer term outcome that you expected to have on participants' lives. That's probably not always realistic to measure. You may be able to do some follow-up surveys like 6 or 12 months post-program, but that might not always be relevant. And you may be looking at things other than the outcomes, such as process. You might be doing some process evaluation, cost effectiveness, and et cetera. So everything you're evaluating should be somewhere in your matrix, but you don't have to evaluate everything. But what you do have to do is, for all of the key elements that you're planning to evaluate, you have to answer those 4 questions: timing and purpose, defining what you need to measure, what information you need, and how you're going to access the information you need to complete your evaluation. So just kind of to sum it up, your program theory matrix defines what your program success looks like. It not just the success criteria, but all the things that are going to go into reaching those goals, reaching those outcomes. And then the evaluation framework operationalizes what and how you're going to measure whether or not success was achieved. So I hope that's been helpful to clarify. If you're still confused or just want a little bit more review, I would recommend reviewing Chapter 8 in your textbook that goes through the program theory matrix and all the elements, and Chapter 14 deals with the evaluation framework. You've read both of them already, but not in the side-by-side way, so this might help. And the textbook authors also did use their same case study in both chapters, so that might help you see some of the differences. If you do that and you're still confused or have more questions, please share them on the discussion board, because you're probably not the only one. And you can also still always reach out to me for a one-on-one if that would be helpful to you. I hope this little lecture has been helpful, and have a great week, everyone.